That's 1 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started. There might be a few people trickling in as we go, but thank you for joining our webinar again. This is Friday, sometime in April 2020, in the year of COVID-19. So thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about changing the culture of evidence management. But as we get started, well, our devices are there. We go. Okay, I'm going to start cursing. We'll use the little button. So again, just to remind people, if you've got questions while we go, there's a little button at the bottom of your screen that says raise your hand. You could feel free to use that. Just be ready to turn on your microphone or type questions in the little question box. We would love to answer your questions as we go. I don't know how much Q&A there will be today, but certainly if you do have questions or comments or anything that you want to say or interject into the conversation, please feel free to do so. We'll also replay this. We'll put a website or a link on the Facebook Evidence Management Community Forum. So feel free to forward that or check it out later if you're busy. And as always, we do encourage you to ask questions. If you've got questions or comments, this works better. It works best when there are people talking back and forth. It's just like a classroom environment, except it's only me in front of you. So we will talk a little bit. We had some panelists again planned for today. Um, we were going to have Dr. Anthony Fossey on, as well as Willie Nelson and Nick Offerman, but none of them were able to be here. But we just felt it was important to let you know that we did plan on having them attend. So we're trying to bring more celebrities to the podcast. So far, we've got zero, but if you've got connections, if you know someone that's not doing anything right now, we would love to have them on. So let's talk more about changing the culture of evidence management. This is one of my favorite topics, and hopefully this is something that we'll continue to visit in the future. But today we just want to talk for a little bit. We probably won't go the full hour unless there are just a huge amount of questions out there or people just clamoring to get involved, which I hope is the case. But I just wanted to kind of make a quick case for taking a look at the culture of evidence management and making a case for changing that up and seeing things done differently. So hopefully that will resonate with a couple of you. Like I say, if you got comments, please bring them forward. So today we're going to talk about basically the characteristics of the culture of evidence management. We'll try to take a little bit of a forward view about evidence management. We'll look at 4 things that you can do right now to affect change, and we'll talk about 2 fun byproducts as a result of COVID-19 and the evidence culture that we might have a moment in time where we can do some cool things and make some changes. So uh, let's get started. So I love going to the dictionary, and I'm sure I'm watching the number of attendees drop as the dictionary screen comes up. But I think it's important to take a look. If we're going to talk about culture, what are we talking about? And really, culture is 2 different things. I mean, culture is it's a form or a stage of civilization, like Greek culture. It's a period in time, or it's the list of behaviors and traits that we associate with a particular group. And we're unique in the sense that we've got a particular piece in time, a particular space in time that we exist in, and we've got a group of evidence managers here together. Uh, so our culture is, I mean, it's a little bit different across the country, but that's basically what we're talking about. And I think if we look at the characteristics of our culture, of evidence culture right now, I think we're pretty focused on a lot of the wrong things. Uh, when I teach classes, and I teach classes all across the country, I've done so for years, and I enjoy that. But I find that there are certain characteristics that seem to be pretty consistent across the board. I mean, there are certain traits that just they seem to be pervasive throughout law enforcement. And I think as a result of that, our focus has gotten off over the years. I think when you look at evidence culture, I think we're very focused. It's a very police focused culture, and that makes sense. But the primary, I guess, cultural artifact related to police officers, and I was a police officer for a number of years before I was an evidence manager or an evidence custodian, was that submit it and forget it mentality. I think that is probably one of the most pervasive pieces of just law enforcement culture as it intersects with evidence management, is that sense that evidence belongs to us. It's our evidence. Once they put it in the locker, they're done with it. And that's a that's a really negative aspect of culture and something that we really need to change and change the dialogue on as we move forward. But that's one of the artifacts of police culture or evidence culture. I think evidence culture is also very past focused. We look at everything that we've never been able to do. We look at everything that's happened to us. It's always been done this way. I mean, I think that most agencies are run entirely based on the mantra of, well, that's the way we've always done it. And I think that seeps into our culture. That's a part of our culture as well. And it's not a really positive part of our culture. We're also very problem focused. I think that most of the training that is available out there, and quite honestly, the reason that I wanted to do something different, the reason I teach training classes out on as the Evidence Management Institute, is because a lot of the training that is available out there is very focused on problems. Uh, you know, and people going to jail, people stealing things, just the very lowest common denominator of humanity as it relates to evidence management. We're just talking about all these problems, and there are a lot of problems. I mean, I'm not going to ignore the fact that problems exist. I'm not going to ignore the fact that we compete for resources, that we have trouble staffing, and we have trouble getting the equipment that we need. Those are real, but that can't be the focus. That can't be the entirety of the conversation. Is this we've had all these problems and no one will help us solve them? That can't be the narrative. If that's the narrative, then we might as well quit, and we can't do that. So we might as well move forward. Been very focused on problems. Uh, and very power focused. I think one of the kind of downsides of our culture currently is a lot of us exist in a sworn civilian dichotomy or environment where there are a lot of civilians in this line of work, and when civilians have conflicts with sworn officers, they always seem to lose. And that's just we're focused on what we can't do. We don't have the authority to make decisions, make purchasing decisions. We can't make people do what we want. We're very focused on our lack of power. And I think that those are some things that we would really benefit uh, from changing. I'd like to see that change in the very near term, and I think that that's possible. I don't think we shouldn't be here if we don't think that change is possible. And hopefully, if you're paying attention, if you're taking your lunch break to listen to a webinar on evidence management, then I'm going to bet that you're bought into this, that you think that there is value in what you do, you think that there is a reason for what we do, and you think that it's important. uh, and hopefully that's the audience that we're talking to. So when I look at the current culture, I look at a culture that is really focused on officers and officers not doing the right thing, and uh, very police focused, very past focused, very problem focused, and very power focused. And unfortunately, if you view evidence management through those four lenses, we lose. I mean, that's end of story. It's done. We can't continue to look at this issue through the same lens that we've always used, because it's a flawed view. So I would like to take a more forward look at evidence management, like look at what can be or what ought to be with respect to evidence management. And I think it's important to interject here that things change. I mean, we exist in a changing world. I don't think that anyone would have ever believed that, you know, 6 months ago, if someone told you, hey, there's a disease out there, we're going to have to stay in our houses for 2 months, no one would have believed you. But things do change. I mean, this is bears witness and testament to that, that things do change. Our identity as evidence managers needs to change. As police departments, law enforcement has lost a lot of the public trust that they once had. I mean, there was a time when police departments could do pretty much whatever they wanted or needed to do, and no one would ever scrutinize them or look twice at their actions. We don't live in an environment like that anymore, and that's actually a good thing. As a result, we've had to become more transparent, and law enforcement is increasingly becoming more and more transparent, and that's a good thing. We look at communication. Our ability to communicate has changed dramatically. I mean, we're talking to people right now across the country, uh, places that I've never been, never seen, talking to people that I've never met, but we're all together on this little webinar, and that's really kind of amazing. If you look back 20, 25 years ago, evidence custodians didn't have the opportunity to get out of the office very often, and when they did, there was nowhere to go. There was no community. But in the absence even of a physical community like a state association, I think we can build community and use technology and leverage the technology that's available to start building more community. And speaking of community, I think that that's one of the things that can change, that will change, especially as our values change. I look at law enforcement, I see a trend um, in law enforcement towards more transparency, towards greater accountability, towards discovery, and making sure that everyone that is involved in a criminal case, the defendant, the prosecution, that everyone has access to all of the evidence against them. And that's going to require a change. But first, it's going to require us to change our identity. And I mentioned this earlier in the week. I'm going to run through these slides again. But if you don't feel this way, I would encourage you to think about a few things with respect to our identity. I think it's really easy to get in this position and be defeated, to feel like, that nobody supports you, that you're doing this on your own, and it's really easy to feel that way because you're stuck in a room that no one else can get in generally. So that isolation, that physical isolation can lead to a sense of I'm doing this by myself. There's no one out here to help me or advocate for me, and that's simply not true. But I think it's always a great thing to do to take a look and make sure that our identity is correct, that that we've that we've taken a look at what we do and why we do it, and that helps propel us forward. Because really, what you do as an evidence manager, it matters. It matters to justice. If you don't do what you do, then justice suffers. That is a very simple and stark truth. If there is no one there to preserve evidence and protect evidence, uh, then bad things happen. And you are on the front line of that. Even though you're locked behind a door, we are the front lines for evidence and the justice system. And there's a tendency for us to think of ourselves as warehouse clerks or people that just store junk. That's not what we do. I encourage people to think of themselves, especially if you're an evidence custodian, you're the curator of a museum. Now, that museum might have a lot of bad things in it. It might be the museum of every horrible thing that's ever happened in your municipality or your county, but it's a museum nevertheless. The work that you do is important. The stuff that you keep is important. You know, there is a common joke that is used in training classes about, the best thing that can happen for an evidence room is a fire. I don't believe that. I think that's a miscarriage of justice. It's not funny to me, because what you keep, what you store, has value. It's important to somebody. Even if it's not important to you, it's important to somebody, and it has merit. It has value. uh, the evidence that we keep, it's got power. It's got the power to exonerate the innocent or to convict the guilty. It's got the power to tell stories for people that can't tell them anymore. And I think I mentioned this earlier. This point really was driven home for me. We work in a homicide involving a victim that was a child, and the evidence that we were collecting and the evidence that we were preserving, that was the only thing that was ever going to tell that story. And there is something really powerful and really important about that when we realize that's the kind of stuff that we take care of. That's why we do what we do. We make sure that that stuff is available so that it can tell the truth to someone or for someone on behalf of someone that is not able to do that. And there is value in that. What you do, even the simple stuff, when you give something back to somebody, when you've got found property and you return it to someone, trust me, I believe that that is a beating. I hated dealing with found property. Everyone does, and it's your right, and your please continue to hate dealing with found property. But when you give people their stuff back, there's value in that too. I mean, you're actually giving people their property, which directly uh, it directly conveys their constitutional rights to property. I mean, you have a impact there when you give something back to someone that owns something. Uh, there is value in that. There is importance in that. So I think it's important for us right now to kind of shift our focus to change the focus of the conversation, change the focus of the culture away from the past, away from problems, away from all of the junk and the way that we've defined ourselves in the past, and use this as an opportunity to focus on the right things. I think we need to shift our focus away from what officers will do or won't do, or what the chief will let us do, or what command will let us do, or what they'll write into policy. Let's not focus on that because we can't control that. Most of us don't have the control, the authority to control those things. But the one thing that we can do is we can focus on the evidence. We can focus on what is best for the evidence, and we can be advocates for what is best for the evidence.
Hey, Shawn, I got a
So,
quick question. Are you presenting slides?
can nobody see them?
No.
Son of a gun.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Dana.
Yeah, wow.
I
We have gone a long way.
didn't. 15 minutes.
Wow.
We were just watching
15
you.
minutes. Yeah, that has got to be the worst 15 minutes in television. Let's see. Let me share my screen. Did I say a cuss word when you told me that we weren't? I wasn't sharing
You
my
said,
screen. Did
wow.
I said wow. Excellent.
Wow.
Wow is good. Wow is what I hoped to say. Yeah. Let
Sorry.
me let me put this screen on because yeah, that gosh, that's got to be horrible. We'll redo this one another time. So let me focus. Let me go back a little bit just so we can get the screens up on the the recording for later. Because that screen, I mean, doesn't that look really pretty? Can you see it now?
No,
Or
just see
nothing.
you.
Oh, hi, I'm on camera still. Uh, yeah, this is good. Deal with technical issues before the show.
Everyone said they felt like it was like up close and personal. Yeah. This is where the laugh track comes into
And
play.
you're about to. There we go. All right.
All right.
Ooh. And I went through all that without using the F word once, which that's good for me. That's really good.
15 minutes
I mean,
later.
okay, well, just because I'm so proud of these, I mean, these were amazing slides. Our planned guests today were Willie Nelson, Dr. Anthony Fossey, and Nick Offerman. We weren't able to have them on, sadly. So there, and if you don't have your own copy of the dictionary, there's some screens there that will share that. So yeah, I think I was just on my soapbox and didn't realize anything. So now we're talking about being focused on the right things. We talked about being focused on the evidence, and I'm just going to pretend in my head that the slideshow was running the whole time and this was absolutely smooth. Uh, so instead of focusing on officers and what officers won't do, or what chief executives won't do, or command staff won't do, we need to focus on what's best for the evidence, and we need to be able to advocate and explain our position on what's best for the evidence, and not worry about the stuff that we can't control. We need to be more focused on the future than the past. Uh, I think that the more we focus on what's possible and what's out there, and not what's been done to us, that the time that we spend focusing on the past is generally pretty much wasted time. And yeah, I just hit another little bump there. And instead of being focused on problems, instead of talking about the problems, I hate the idea of reading news stories about evidence managers that have gone to jail or that have stolen stuff or that have taken pills. I mean, to me, I don't teach that. I don't put that in my class because I feel like if I've got to teach you not to steal something from a police department, then you're in the wrong class. If I've got to teach you that it's bad to steal or that it's bad to take drugs that are in evidence, really, you don't need my class. You need another class, and that's something that we can't teach you. You're just going to have to go to jail. That's just the way it's going to be. So we don't need to teach that in class. What I want to teach and what I want us to focus on as evidence managers are not the problems. I mean, everyone's got problems. Let's focus on solutions. That's why our training classes are really, we really try to focus more on solutions than we do problems. And I think that hopefully these webinars, we're focusing more on solutions than we are problems because that's really what's going to make a difference. I don't need to get in front of you and broadcast a webinar on all the things wrong in evidence management. There's no value in that because we're all pretty much acutely aware of the problems. If you're not, then God bless you, you don't have to deal with it. So it's not something you need to worry about. But let's focus on solutions. And I'd
So
love
building
for us.
on that,
Yeah,
I was gonna say, so building on that, I got a question. It says, do you have any suggestions on bringing awareness or positive recognition to the evidence units, especially when they're
absolutely,
out of sight, out of mind?
absolutely, I do. And a couple of them we will hit on in the future, but or not in the future, but later on in the broadcast. But here are a couple of things that I would recommend, and we'll go ahead and just head here right now. Is that may not happen at your police department. You know, that might not happen in the context of what you do as an evidence custodian at your local municipality or at your county. Uh, but that can very definitely happen if we choose to engage in communities of other evidence managers and other evidence custodians. Now, I would love to be able to tell you uh, that we could have some kind of program where we compel police chiefs to recognize evidence custodians at their agencies, but that's not going to happen. But you do exist in a bigger community where there are other evidence managers, other evidence custodians working around you. We just have to begin to build those communities and be part of those communities. And that's really where the recognition starts to make sense. For me, I got a little award from our city manager based on some of the work that we did in our property room, but he didn't know anything about what we were doing. He had no idea how hard it was to get that stuff done. But the people that did were people at our state association, you know, people that understand what you're going through. That's the kind of recognition from your peers, but they just don't exist around you. So we have to start building community in unique ways and in creative ways to where we can get recognition for the things that we do. Um, so that's an indirect way, but we'll talk more about that absolutely here in just a few minutes. Uh, so instead of worrying about our power or our lack of power or our lack of decision making, I would love for us as a culture just to move forward and be more focused on how we can influence rather than the authority that we may or may not have. A very wise man, John Maxwell, in a book that I read most of, probably not all of, but most of. He the one thing that really resonated with me in that book was that you can't always have power, you can't always have authority, but you can always have influence. And the way we conduct ourselves as evidence managers makes a huge difference in our ability to influence others. And I think it's important for us to start focusing on the influence that we can have incrementally, not just within the four walls of our police department, but within the greater evidence management community, because together, collectively, we can have a lot more influence than we can as one person behind one evidence vault door. Uh, Collectively, your influence grows exponentially. I think it's also important to start focusing on all the stakeholders in the process. I think traditionally, evidence management has been really focused on making sure that the police officers turn their stuff in, making sure we get the stuff to the courts. But really, it's important for us, if we really want to be successful, is to think about all of the stakeholders in the system, all the stakeholders in the process. I'm talking about labs. I'm talking about prosecuting attorneys. I'm talking about defense attorneys and defendants. Everyone that has a stake in the evidence that you are storing, those are people that we need to consider when we make decisions and when we move forward. Each of those can be an advocate for us when it's time to make change and when we need to make change. So, all that being said, there is a utopia that exists out there. I'm not sure where it is, but there are a few things that you can do right now to start changing the culture of evidence management in your area, in your city, in your municipality. And the simple way to put it is, I mean, the four things you can do: one, you can connect; two, you can develop; three, you can advocate; and four, you can influence. uh, Connect, develop, advocate, influence. This is stuff that you can do this week, stuff you can do today if you choose to start making a difference. um, Let me move forward here. So let's talk a little bit about connection. The first thing that you can do is connect. The first thing that I would do today, if I were you, and if I existed in one of the 12 states that has a state property and evidence association, is I would join that state property and evidence association. There is value in community, there is power, there is influence in a group of people gathered together with one common goal. There is power in that, and there is influence available as a result of that, depending on how we conduct ourselves. But I'd also like to make a plug. If you exist in one of the other, and I should have done the math on my own. Let's see, what 40 38 states, 38 states that don't have evidence associations. I don't know how many of you out there are located in a state that doesn't have a state property and evidence association. But I would encourage you to start thinking about, if you exist in one of those states, one of the things that you can do today, this week, is start one. And we have an initiative that I want to talk really quick about. If you've got a group of people, if you've got a group of evidence custodians and you're in a state that doesn't have an association, most of the time it's the reason that they don't get kicked off, that they don't get started, is because no one knows where to begin and no one knows how they could get funding to get things started. We're going to make it really easy for you. The Evidence Management Institute, we've got an initiative. When I started teaching classes, I realized how few of these associations there were. We wanted to kick off, and by the end of 2020, and now we might extend it due to the COVID-19, by the end of 2020, we wanted to see 20 associations across the United States. So if you're interested, and this is something that might be of interest to you, we've kicked it off in Missouri, and we're in the process of getting them finalized and legally set up as a 501c3. And I think that's gone pretty well. I mean, there have been bumps, uh, but it's been a fun process. And at the end of the year, we're going to see a new 501c3, a nonprofit in Missouri where there wasn't one before, that's specifically dedicated and focused on evidence management. But we'll help you get connected. We'll help you connect with other people in the States. We will facilitate that connection through online meetings. Heck, if you can get a group of people together, we will come to you after, of course, the disease has reached its uh, off peak time. But we'll come to you and we'll help you get set up. We'll help you meet. We will help you establish an organization, and we will help you get up and running. And we will fund the filing. We'll fund the legal fees to make sure that you're set up for success from the beginning, uh, because it's that important. Because being a part of a state association, there is no better investment in your energy as an evidence manager than being a part of one of those associations. I can't tell you how much value there is in that, because each state, the laws are different. And because the laws are different, it's really important to have state people from the same state getting together and talking about evidence issues at the local level in their state, because that just makes sense. There are states that have amazing associations. Texas has got a great one. California's got a great one. Uh, New Mexico has a great one. Illinois has a great one. So there are a lot of North Carolina. I mean, Florida. There are a lot of states with great associations, and we would love to connect you within your own state to start one of your own. We'll pay for it. We'll turn it over to you. We don't want to run it, but we definitely see the value, and we believe that that's going to help change and shape the culture for years to come. if we can just find the people that are interested in getting those kicked off and off the ground. So the next thing that you can do is start developing. Develop yourself, build your knowledge, skills, and abilities. Get on our website and start reading the things that are just free and available to you. We published our standards and best practices online. Become well versed in those. And if you disagree with them, that's supposed to be a body of work that is a community kind of a crowdsourced work, because we want it to be relevant to everyone. So that's something you can do to build your knowledge and skills just from your seat at home or at the office in your own time. But I would also encourage you to start trying to develop others. Reach out to other evidence managers or other evidence custodians in the municipality next to you. Know their names, know who does what. I know that's really easy, especially in a time of social distancing, for us to become more distant. But pick up the phone and call the jurisdiction next to you if you haven't done that. And just find out who that person is. Strike up a conversation with them. Start developing each other. The relationships that you build with the people next door to you in the same county with you, they're going to pay off amazing dividends, and they're going to help you build community. Um, so the third thing is advocacy. And becoming an advocate is different than just being an evidence custodian that punches the clock at 8 in the morning and punches it again at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Being an advocate is an active choice. An advocate is someone that participates in change, and you can make that choice. A lot of people don't think, well, I don't know enough. It's not me. I'm not an expert. Well, you are the expert. You're the absolute expert at your agency. No one knows more than you about evidence management. I promise. Uh, and if there is someone that knows more, get to know them and learn from them. Excuse me. But you can be the advocate, you can be the expert at your agency, and your advocacy for your own agency's evidence, that's going to help establish and build influence with the other people in the building. When they realize that you're serious about your job and you're serious and committed, you're passionate about evidence management, that's going to help you build and begin to develop influence. If you'd like to advocate on a different scale, we've got a couple of projects that at the Evidence Management Institute that I would invite you to participate in. One of the things that we've started working on is we would love to have a guidebook for evidence laws in each of the 50 states. I can't do that by myself. We can't do that with our office staff. That's just not going to happen. But if you would love to become an evidence advocate, especially at your own state level, and you would like to help other evidence managers and evidence custodians in your state, contact me. Help me figure this out. Help me put this together so that we can have a resource that's available for other people. If We will cite and credit anybody that helps us. We're not going to take this as our own work or pretend that we did it all on our own, because this is not a single person effort. We want this to be a community effort, a crowdsourced effort, to where we start to build community and people see who exists out there and who is interested in this and who makes a difference. The same with our standards and best practices. It would warm my heart to have someone email me tomorrow and say, "Hey, I read your standards and best practices guide. I disagree with you on the following 5 things." Uh, we might not agree about what you disagree on, but I would love to have the conversation. And the goal for us at the Evidence Management Institute is to have a body of standards and best practices that works and answers the questions for evidence managers all across the country. If what you find in there doesn't work for you, or if it doesn't address things that you feel need to be addressed, let us know. It's a constantly evolving body of work that we would love to have broad participation in. We would love to have broad buy-in on our evidence, on our standards and best practices as well, because we would love to see these become the standards that just get adopted throughout the country as the body of standards and best practices to go to. There are other standards and best practices out there that exist. I found them hard to read and hard to deal with. Now, I will say that the NIST guide, we haven't written biological evidence standards or best practices for the Evidence Management Institute because it's already been done better. That's the body of work that we refer people to for biological evidence. Uh, we want to point people in the right direction for the best information that's out there. And if we don't produce it, We'll point you to the direction where you can find it. So advocacy is the last one. Or not the last one, is the third one. The last thing that you can do today is develop your influence. I would love to see people volunteer to moderate the Facebook evidence management community forum who are evidence managers working in evidence management every day, or at least have an interest in working in evidence management every day. That really belongs to you. It's a place for you to share your successes, to share opportunities, to share solutions with each other, to use that as a sounding board, or as a place to bring people together and to share ideas. That ought to be your place. So if you are interested in moderating that forum, I mean, I would love to see active evidence managers who are working in the field take that thing over, and we'll take a step back. Uh, we want to use that to put information out there, but hey, that's something that if it begins to develop traction and begins to get people together and get people talking, we can facilitate the beginning of that. But really, it has value when it's got a life of its own, when it's self-sustaining. So if you'd love to moderate, that's a great way to begin to develop influence, to build community, to get to know people, to start conversations. I would highly encourage that, and that's just a great way to start changing the culture around us. The more we're connected together as evidence managers, the more we build community, and that's really where things begin to change. I'll talk about two fun things real quick that are byproducts of COVID-19 and culture change. Two of the things that we're working on, as soon as we finish this little webinar series, next week we're going to go to once a week, and we will post something about that. It'll either be from Tracker or from us at the Evidence Management Institute. But we'll send you information about the next series of webinars. But I'm currently working on a podcast that we can listen to. You can listen to anytime. Uh, it will be the most riveting hour in evidence management, I promise you, because the competition is just that easy. And it will be the evidence show. It's a podcast. It will be invigorating. It will be stimulating. It will be kind of the stuff that really belongs out there on the internet. And you can just count on that. But another thing we're going to work on, I mean, I've not been able to train. I've not been able to go to training. I was supposed to be this week in Illinois teaching at a conference there. I was looking forward to that. Thought that was going to be fun. Was going to go to Giordano's, maybe even catch a Cubs game. But sadly, that didn't happen. But what we did start doing is let's figure out what we can do right now. And I would like to see you do the same thing where you said, what can we do from where we're at in our isolated places to make a difference and to start moving the needle in the right direction? And one of the things that hit me is I've been trying to find a way to reach police executives. Uh, because my position as an instructor, as a teacher, I could come up with a police chief's class or a sheriff's class, and I might find a sheriff's association or a police association to teach at. I go to IACP every year, but they end up just kind of taking my pens and my little sticky note pads and passing me by. But I really think that there is value. We need to get this to police executives. So one of the things that we're going to work on, and I've got time to do it, is I'm going to publish a guide, an evidence management handbook for executives, for police chiefs, and for sheriffs. And I would love your help. I would love your input. If you want to take part in that in any way, let me know. But this is something that we're going to publish. It's going to look sleek. It's going to look professional. It will be professional because we've got time to do it. And inside that guide, we are going to give police chiefs and sheriffs everything they need to know about evidence management, about being a chief over an evidence management unit in a very small space because they have short attention spans, much like me. So that's something that we're going to produce, and I'm not sure when that's going to come out, but that's something that wouldn't have happened if we weren't stuck here in the office in Dallas, Texas for for the foreseeable future. So look for those to come out. If you'd like to take part or be a part of either of those, would love to have you. Would welcome you as part of the project. And I think that that's the last slide. So we'll look at the bottom of the screen and see if there are any questions. And seeing none, I don't have that screen up, Joe.
Got a comment. That's about it. Um, Jay wants. He said he disagrees with you about the culture. Wants to know when there was a time that police were not challenged.
Did I say
Hey,
that the police weren't challenged?
in the beginning you did. You said, well, I think it was more towards the time that we're in right now, as opposed to times of the
Oh,
past where you've been a little bit better.
okay, yeah. I'm an old man, Jay, and I forget things almost as soon as I say them. But yeah, what I was speaking of was there was a time in I mean, and not in my time, when the work that police officers did, 50s, 60s, 40s, 30s, not too long ago, where we weren't scrutinized, we weren't challenged. Uh, I just think that in the last 20 years that's changed, and that's not a bad thing. I don't think that that's not a negative thing. uh, we benefit, we become better as policing our communities when there is more transparency. So that was all I was saying.
Now they're rolling in. You opened a can of worms.
Oh, good.
Can you give us a list of states that have associations? That's a good one.
Oh, that
Yes.
is a great,
And
yeah, I could do it sort of off the top of my head. I will go with Texas has one, New Mexico, Florida, California, North Carolina, Illinois, New Mexico. Uh, Joe,
North
I got this
Carolina,
many. I got North Carolina,
North
Virginia, I
Carolina,
believe.
California,
I got them.
Florida, Texas. I'm trying to think here. Illinois.
Got them.
Um, I think that's it. She's interested in starting one in North Dakota.
If you're interested in North Dakota, please let me know. On our website, and I'll put a link to this. And I've got to contact another person that you could work with in North Dakota that would also probably be interested in. But I'll put the link on the Facebook community forum, and it's a page where you just kind of sign up, and it gives me kind of a list. The next state that we're hoping to hit is Oklahoma, because we've got some interest there. Uh, but yeah,
Wisconsin, Minnesota.
I don't. Minnesota, I think, had one that they're trying to revive. Churston uh,
Revive. Yeah.
is trying to revive that one, and so I think Minnesota has one already. But if you're in Minnesota and you're looking, send me an email, uh, or get on the website, and we will try to link you up with the folks that are already working. We don't want to duplicate the efforts of work that's already been done. If there are people in Minnesota that are trying to revive an existing, uh, we don't want to invest our efforts there. But in places like North Dakota, where we know that there's not an association, please let me know, and we would love to partner with you and help facilitate getting that set up. We just believe that it's that important. It's worth it for us to invest the legal fees and the filing fees and a little bit of time and meeting space and connecting people, because it makes that big of a difference for evidence management in each state where it exists. Were there any questions, Joe?
Is there such a thing as too much transparency to the public? I think that means in the public's perception, is there a thing as too much?
I don't know that I'm the best to answer that question, but I do know that, yeah, there are
We should
some
post that
things
in the
that,
Facebook group.
yeah, there's some things that the public really doesn't need to know, but those are generally already carved out. But in terms of what we do and how we do it, the more they know, the better, especially with respect to evidence management.
I will tell you there as a from my perspective, I was doing an RFP from a software standpoint, and I was being asked by evidence custodians if there was a way to make information that was put in the system non-discoverable, so they could actually hide information. What do you think about that?
I think that that's a bad idea. I think that I think that any push to make things non-discoverable violates the very principle of discovery. And I think that,
Yes.
we exist in a nation governed by a constitution, that tricky little document that those old rascals wrote so many years ago. But they wrote things in there that were important, that we hold to be important. And discovery and having the ability to know the evidence against you, uh, that's one of the good things. So,
Okay. I think that's it.
all right, folks, I don't know what time it is. It's 1:45 here in Texas. I've been kicking the webcam a lot. Thank you for paying attention. If you've been paying attention, uh, and if you haven't, thank you for just keeping your computer on for this amount of time. So we'll see you at the next one. We'll start sending information out. The 20 and 2020, I'll put that link on the Facebooks immediately as soon as I figure out how to log back into Facebook. So have a great weekend. Thank you for being here. If you've got questions, if you disagree with me, please give me a call or send me an email. I've got no one to talk to right now. Uh, and my family, they they're okay with me just being here at the office. So have a great weekend. Thanks a lot. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everyone. Thanks for the laugh, Sean.